My name is Nathan Peacock, and I'm a sound recordist. So what is timecode? What does the average crew member on set need to understand about it? And what does someone who's actually using it need to understand about it? If you're just going to be around it and you don't really know what it is and you're curious, think of it like a master clock for everyone's cell phone in a city. No one's actually syncing up their clocks or their timers to each other, but everyone's phone says more or less the same time. Think of a more precise version of that, but for only all the recording devices on a film set, so cameras, audio recorders, smart slates, etc. Now, if you're using timecode and you're the one handling it, you might need to know a couple more things about it. First off, if you listen to it, you know that it's that 2-signal tone that sounds horrible when you play it back through speakers. That gets interpreted by the reader as time of day with hours, minutes, seconds, frames, and user bits. User bits are a more specific set of metadata that typically is just the date, but some devices can have more specific things such as camera reel, media number, and some other things as well that might be specific to certain productions. Timecode acts as a frame-accurate master clock for all the recording devices on sets, including cameras, audio recorders, and also smart slates and time bar readers. It serves as the master clock so that everything knows exactly to the frame what time it is, so that when an editor receives files at the end, they just align by time of day and you don't have to go through meticulously sync every shot between cameras and audio recorders. So who is timecode for? Well, it turns out that timecode is for anyone who has a production where there's multiple devices that are all recording at the same time and need to be synced later. You can rely on the old tried and true clapperboard, where you see the little spike in the waveform and you can visually line that up to whatever frame the two sticks connected, or you can be more sophisticated and you can have timecode be your sync, which is embedded metadata in all the recordings so that you can just align to time of day, and it's an instantaneous process for the editor later, and it saves you literally hours of work. You know the pain I'm talking about if you've tried to sync multiple cameras and multiple audio recordings in post with no method of syncing other than the scratch audio track. Timecode is used predominantly on cameras and audio recorders. Audio recorders will match to whatever frame rate the camera is being recorded at, so that afterwards the number of frames lines up. Timecode's going to rely on there being one master clock source that everything else gets set to. That can be a variety of different timecode boxes, that can also be a recorder, and in rare cases that can be a camera. The fundamental is it has to be able to output linear timecode in such a way that something else can then receive it and jam to it. You choose whatever device is going to be your master clock. If appropriate, set it to whatever time you'd like. That can be a preset, that can be a time of day, and then one by one you connect all the rest of your devices that are going to be jammed to it via a cable, whatever one is appropriate, and jam the signal. Jam is just the word that we use to say that one time source has been aligned to another timecode source. Some manufacturers make an app that you can use from your smartphone to connect to a device, and your smartphone time of day becomes the master clock. Bluetooth 5.1 is the most common way to communicate with these devices. And while this is fairly reliable out in the field, some people still choose not to use it because they only trust the tried and true hardline cable. Once you've chosen your master clock source, connect all the rest of your devices to it and jam it to the master clock. One method that the Ambient Lockit uses is connecting it to a computer and determining multiple settings that you want to sync to one or many devices. That one device then uses a proprietary wireless signal to broadcast to all the rest on the same network to keep them all in sync throughout the entire day. Tentacle is another manufacturer, and they've decided to use your smartphone as the primary clock source. Usually what you'll do is you'll turn them on, set them to master mode, and then sync as many boxes as you have access to your phone's time of day. They typically don't drift for more than about 18 hours or so at a time. Now you can resync them later on throughout the day if you want to. However, keep in mind that with that workflow, if you're not syncing all of the devices that you have in your shoot at the same time, there's a possibility that your phone might have drifted by a couple of frames, and when you resync them later on, if they're not syncing everything, they could be slightly different from each other. Deity is another company that makes timecode boxes, and very similar to Tentacle, they also have a phone app that you can use to predetermine what time of day the timecode is going to be on all the devices. You can do all of them all at the same time, or again, like Tentacle, you can do one and then systematically plug it into all the rest of your slave boxes and jam them all to the master. It's not exactly a huge advantage doing one way or the other. It just depends on what your signal flow looks like and how your gear is laid out. If everything is very hard to gather together, then it makes more sense to go around with one master and jam everything individually. With the DSLR and mirrorless camera revolution, we're using a lot of cameras that aren't exactly meant for professional workflow, and not everything will actually support timecode as an input. However, there is a bit of a cheat that you can use in a pinch to make some cameras that aren't supposed to have the ability to run timecode work with your timecode workflow anyways. One such method is change the setting in your camera to be free run for timecode. That way, whenever you start and stop, it doesn't start and stop the clock as well. It just continuously runs. Then go into your camera's menu and find the time preset selection. Go there and pick a time that's just a little bit into the future and have a running clock next to you that you can follow along to click set at the appropriate time. This is pretty close, but it's not exactly accurate. However, it will save you a lot of headache when this is your only camera that you have to go and manually sync to waveform when everything else is all in timecode. I've done this in the past and it has worked. It is a bit of a hack and not everyone is going to appreciate that Mickey Mouse sort of a workflow, but it beats going by waveform. One other way that you can get timecode into your recorder is you can actually record it as an audio signal. Now, some cables will output on different pins, but for the most part, they're going to be outputting on pin 1, which is typically the left signal in a 3.5mm jack. You also have some cable connectors where they output to an XLR, so you can record it onto one of the standard inputs on a professional audio recorder. Both of these methods will embed the timecode as an audio signal, which is horrible during playback and really annoying if you ever need to check a shot, but it's a fallback system that can help you if you have no other option to record timecode. This can be used as well if you're recording, say, multi-tracks on a digital audio console in a theater or a venue, and you want to sync that to your cameras later on. You just mute the channel and record it along with the rest, and then sync it up in post to that one channel with its embedded timecode. If you do record timecode as an audio source, you can actually open it up in your editor later on and see the tones going back and forth. So you don't really want to listen to this, you just want to use it to replace or update your existing timecode and then turn it off as soon as possible. Ideally, you have a timecode box input into your camera that has a scratch audio track on the right channel, so you can actually have some form of intelligibility when you're listening back to the playback. So what do you do now that you've got all your files and you're sitting there in your editor and you don't know where to start? Well, there's multiple methods to do it in multiple different editors, but predominantly they follow a similar sort of format. You want to set a multicam sequence to be your master. What you want to do is set all of each camera type in the metadata to be camera 1, 2, 3, whatever you want it to be, so that they don't make multiple tracks for the same camera for every single clip. Now that you've done this, highlight all the tracks you want to sync together, and you want to make a multicam sequence from it. This process might vary a little bit from NLE to NLE, and I'm demonstrating on DaVinci Resolve, but it's more or less the same practice across them all. It'll ask you how you want to sequence the cameras, and if you choose by camera metadata, then we'll use the numbers that we inputted earlier to keep each camera on its own track, and same with the audio recorders. If for whatever reason a multicam sequence isn't right for your current project, you can do it another way, albeit it's a bit time consuming. In DaVinci Resolve, you're only allowed to do one clip per track at a time. But if you highlight multiple clips and right-click and auto-align by timecode, it'll instantly snap them so that the time of day matches up on both clips. If you only have a couple of clips, this might be the easier way to do it rather than going through a multicam sequence. However, once you have more than 10 or 20 clips, this becomes very tedious very quickly. Now, some manufacturers do make their own app that allows you to sync up multiple clips across multiple cameras over a whole day in just a few clicks. One such example is actually Tentacle Sync Studio, made by Tentacle. Drag and drop all of your clips into their program, and it will automatically analyze all the clips to see which ones have matching timecode. If they don't, they're flagged with a red or yellow tab. Once all your clips are dragged into the program, simply auto-align them into a timeline, and then you can export it as an XML. Export it into whatever format is right for you, and then open it in your favorite nonlinear editor. Now, side note here, I have had some odd experiences using Tentacle Sync Studio. By far, the benefits outweigh the negatives. However, one such negative is once I import the XML into my nonlinear editor, I have noticed that some of the clips appear to be missing, however there's still a box for the exact position that they belong in. I can get around this by dragging the media from the bins to replace the exact red clip. However, it's just a thing to be aware of. When you drag in the original media to replace the red box, make sure that snapping is enabled so that it is a frame-accurate alignment. I haven't exactly found a solution to this, even though I have gone through more updates, and not everyone else seems to have the same experience as I do, so it might be something unique to my particular system with some other plugins or settings that I have on it. I'm unsure of that, but while no system is perfect, it does save a lot of headaches for sure. I was made aware of a very unique situation that somebody had involving many action cameras that they needed to sync up for some driving sequences. Now what they ended up doing is they set all of their cameras to time of day, so that the recordings would be more or less about a minute or so within each other if you looked at the metadata of when they were started, when they were stopped. However, not every clip from every camera that was used, because there were multiple different brands, would bring in that time as timecode to the camera when we're looking at it in the editor. The solution this guy had was to use a program called QT Change 64. I've only made use of this program a couple of times, and I did have to pay a little bit for it, but as a last resort, what this program can do is actually change your existing metadata inside of a file from one timecode to another timecode. You can update this metadata in the original file or save it in a new location, whatever you'd like to do. This is time consuming and requires you to calculate by second and frame from where it started to where you'd like it to start from in terms of time of day. This is not a very fun process to do, and if you are using this, I feel bad for your current workflow because it's not easy. However, it can save you a lot of grief later on if you're passing files off to an editor and there was an error on the recording site. Timecode can be scary if it's not been in your workflow before, but I guarantee that if you can get over the technical hurdle of understanding it, it will help you and you won't know how you ever got along without it. If any of this was useful, hit the bell, like the comments, subscribe to someone else's content. I'm mixing up these call to actions, but you know the things to do on YouTube. There's gonna be more of these videos coming out and they're all sound, technical, or both focused.